Celeste danced as if she commanded the very fabric of the night. Each movement was meticulously crafted, her hips undulating like liquid silk in slow motion, arms slicing through the air with a fluid grace that spoke volumes. Her body was a storyteller, weaving intricate tales without uttering a single word. The stage wasn't merely a platform where she performed. It was her throne, the epicenter of her power. She was more than just a dancer. She was the undisputed queen of the nocturnal realm. She didn't need to smile or tease. She simply commanded attention, her presence an irresistible force. The crowd at Velvet Lights was perpetually ensnared by her magic. Their senses heightened, their inhibitions forgotten. Drinks froze in midair, poised between glass and lips. Conversations abruptly ceased, sentences unfinished. As the mundane world faded into insignificance, nothing else mattered except the hypnotic rhythm of her body, the mesmerizing sway of her limbs. The music pulsed low and steady, a primal heartbeat resonating beneath the hazy red glow of the club, amplifying the feeling of being somewhere else. Velvet Lights wasn't just a club. It was a sanctuary, a parallel universe where fantasies took flight in the spotlight, and reality cowered behind a veil of secrecy. And every night culminated with Celeste, her arrival a spectacle in itself. She didn't burst onto the scene with flamboyant energy. Instead, she emerged with a slow, deliberate power, an undeniable magnetism that drew all eyes to her. Long legs, bold curves, and a gaze that didn't flirt. It devoured, consuming the attention of everyone in the room. She didn't simply entertain. She bewitched, casting a spell that lingered long after she left the stage. Backstage, Tasha watched with narrowed eyes, arms crossed tightly, jaw clenched. Her makeup was impeccably applied, her smile practiced and polished, a facade that masked the simmering rage within. While Tasha relentlessly pushed her body to its limits, flipping and contorting on the poles, enduring drunken jokes, and bending over backward for meager tips, Celeste seemed to glide effortlessly through the night, her tip jar perpetually overflowing. She ain't even sweating, Tasha thought bitterly, brushing glitter across her collarbone with a frustrated flick of her wrist. And they throw money at her like she's a damn goddess. Well, girl, said Roxy, one of the newer dancers, giggling nervously as she adjusted her sequined boots. She kind of is, ain't she? You must be new here, honey. The VIP list don't even breathe without her on it. Tasha rolled her eyes, dismissing Roxy's comment. Whatever. This whole damn club is gonna remember my name, too. I'm done waiting for my turn. And just like that, a storm began to gather behind Tasha's expertly applied false lashes, brewing with resentment and ambition. Meanwhile, outside the pulsating heart of the club, a sleek black SUV silently pulled up to the curb. Inside sat Miles Kingston, a billionaire tech CEO, newly returned from a business trip to London. He hadn't wanted to be there, but his persistent friend had insisted. I swear, just one show. His buddy Jordan had pleaded over the phone. You'll thank me after. Miles sighed inwardly and reluctantly stepped out of the vehicle, unaware that tonight wouldn't be about fleeting drinks or fleeting dances. It would be about a woman who would irrevocably alter the course of his carefully constructed life. Miles Kingston stepped into Velvet Lights like a man venturing into an alien world. The dim, smoky lighting, the plush velvet drapes, the heady scent of perfume mingling with ambition. It all hit him at once. A sensory overload that threatened to overwhelm. It wasn't his scene, not anymore. He'd indulged in the nightlife scene in his reckless 20s. But now, at 34, success came in the form of quiet deals and silent power. Clubs were just noise, distractions, a far cry from the focus he craved. Still, Jordan, his college friend and eternal party starter, clapped him on the back, a wide grin splitting his face. Trust me, man. This place, it's not like the others. Just wait till you see her. Her? Miles raised a skeptical eyebrow as they were led to a private table strategically positioned near the stage. Jordan leaned in conspiratorially, his voice barely a whisper. Final act of the night. Name's Celeste. You'll see. The rest of the show unfolded in a hazy blur. Other dancers shimmered and spun, showcasing varying degrees of talent and enthusiasm. Some were undeniably gifted, others merely eager to please. The crowd roared its approval, showering the performers with cheers and applause. Miles sipped his expensive drink, unmoved by the spectacle. Then, the lights dimmed further, plunging the room into near darkness. A single spotlight pierced the gloom, illuminating a lone figure. A collective hush fell over the audience as she stepped into the light. Celeste, tall, commanding, radiating an aura of unearthly beauty. Her body moved with the fluidity of silk drifting over an open flame. Controlled, hypnotic, utterly captivating. She didn't acknowledge the crowd with a forced smile or a practiced wave. She looked through them, her gaze suggesting they were fortunate to witness her artistry. Miles didn't blink. He was transfixed. Jordan chuckled beside him, nudging him playfully. Told ya. For the next 10 minutes, the room belonged solely to her. She didn't need elaborate props or cheap tricks. Her mere presence was enough to command the undivided attention of everyone in the room. And when the final beat resonated through the space and she vanished behind the velvet curtain, the audience erupted in thunderous applause, a testament to her captivating performance. Miles sat in stunned silence. Then, with quiet resolve, he reached into his tailored jacket, retrieved a sleek pen, and scribbled something on the back of his pristine business card. He discreetly waved over a hulking bouncer, the man's expression unreadable. He handed him the card. For Celeste. No pressure. Just 15 minutes of her time. No strings attached. The bouncer took the card, his eyes briefly scanning the name Miles Kingston, before he gave a curt nod of acknowledgement. Backstage, Celeste wiped the sheen of sweat from her forehead, exhaling a deep breath of relief. Another night, another performance successfully completed. She had barely settled into a chair when Andre, the club's perpetually harried floor manager, approached her with a wide, opportunistic grin and a crisp white envelope clutched in his hand. VIP request, he said, waving the envelope as if it were a winning lottery ticket. Celeste raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her expression a mixture of curiosity and weariness. From who? The man in the gray suit, front row, Andre said, leaning in conspiratorially. Name's Miles. He dropped 2 million cash. No photos, no noise. Just 10 minutes. He paused, allowing the gravity of the offer to sink in, then smiled suggestively. Said it's just to talk. Celeste nodded slowly, her mind already weighing the possibilities. Tell him I'll be there. The private suite was an oasis of calm, a stark contrast to the frenetic energy of the club. Soft amber lights cast a warm glow, and the air was devoid of music or loud voices. A plush leather couch beckoned, a bottle of chilled water sat invitingly on a nearby table, and a man sat alone, his silhouette outlined against the soft lighting. Miles. Celeste walked in with quiet confidence, draped in a luxurious satin robe, her damp hair cascading down her back. She closed the door gently behind her, the sound muffled by the thick walls. You called? She said, her voice soft yet firm, betraying no hint of nervousness. Miles stood up, his eyes meeting hers. I did. He extended his hand. Miles Kingston. She regarded it for a fleeting moment, then shook it, her grip surprisingly firm. Celeste. I know, he said with a small, genuine smile. Everyone does. She didn't reply, merely settled onto the couch across from him, crossing her long legs and studying him with an intense gaze. So what do you want? A dance? Something more private? Miles shook his head, dismissing the proposition. No, I just want to talk. She blinked, momentarily taken aback. Talk? You paid 2 million just to talk? She asked, her arms folding protectively across her chest. Yes, he said, leaning back into the couch, his expression unreadable. A lot of people try to buy what they don't understand. I don't want to be like them. Celeste arched an eyebrow, intrigued by his unconventional approach. And what do you want to understand? You, he said simply, his gaze unwavering. The word hung in the air for a beat too long, laden with unspoken implications. Celeste blinked again, slightly disarmed by his directness, then offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Not coin. Curious. That's new. Miles chuckled softly. I doubt I'm the first man who's been captivated by you. She shrugged, a gesture of indifference. Captivated, maybe. Curious? Rarely. He leaned forward slightly, closing the distance between them. So tell me, who are you when the lights go off? Celeste hesitated, her carefully constructed facade momentarily crumbling. Then, slowly, cautiously, she began to reveal herself. I'm a student, psychology major, dancer by night, trying to pay off my sister's hospital bills. Miles nodded, visibly impressed by her resilience. That's a full plate. It's survival, she said, her eyes steady, reflecting a steely determination. Miles studied her intently, searching for any hint of vulnerability. You do more than survive. You command. Celeste's carefully constructed guard wavered, a crack appearing in her flawless facade. For a fleeting moment, her confidence seemed to dim, revealing something more delicate, more vulnerable underneath. Why does that matter to you? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. He answered without missing a beat, his words filled with genuine sincerity. Because when someone shines that brightly, there's usually a storm they had to dance through to get there. Celeste sat back, her lips parting slightly, unsure how to respond. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a genuine urge to say something real, to shed the layers of pretense that she wore like armor. Backstage in the cramped locker room of velvet lights, Tasha slammed her locker shut with such force that the metal reverberated like a thunderclap. A few nearby girls flinched, but wisely remained silent. They were all too familiar with that sound by now. The sharp clang of frustration, the unmistakable sound of Tasha losing, yet again. 2 million, she muttered under her breath, pacing back and forth in the cramped space, her designer heels clicking angrily against the worn floor. Just to talk to her? Nobody responded. What could they say? Celeste had always been the headliner, the girl the regulars stayed late to see, the one the new girls whispered about after their first shift. But now it wasn't just stage magic that set her apart. It was real money, obscene money, from a man who didn't even want to dance. That's not normal, Tasha hissed, grabbing a brush and yanking it viciously through her tangled wig. She's got some trick. I know it. From the corner of the room, Zara, a timid newcomer, spoke up quietly. Maybe she's just good. Tasha turned sharply, her eyes blazing with resentment. We all work just as hard, some of us harder, but somehow it's always Celeste they line up for. Zara lowered her eyes, avoiding Tasha's burning gaze. Tasha continued her tirade, her voice rising in pitch. She walks around here like she's some kind of queen, like the rest of us are just background dancers in her movie. I smile, I flirt, I hustle for every damn tip. And she barely blinks and they throw money at her. A long, pregnant pause filled the locker room, heavy with unspoken grievances. I'm done watching her take everything, Tasha whispered, her tone now dangerously low. I'm done being invisible. She grabbed her bag and stormed out of the room, leaving behind a thick silence and a chill that settled deep within the walls. Something had irrevocably shifted, and whatever Tasha was planning, it wasn't going to be good. Outside, under the dull, flickering glow of the alley light, she pulled out her phone, her hands trembling slightly. Her fingers flew across the screen, typing a message to someone she hadn't spoken to in months, someone she'd hoped she never needed to contact again. You still hang around the club after hours? Need a favor? Not big, just rattle someone's cage a little. Her thumb hovered over the send button, her heart pounding in her chest. Then, with a surge of adrenaline, she pressed it. Back in the VIP room, Celeste laughed. A genuine, unrestrained laugh that reached her eyes. Really laughed. For the first time in a long while. Miles listened to her stories with genuine interest, without judgment, without asking for anything in return. He paid millions just to talk. No one had ever done that before. Miles smiled, his expression calm and warm. He didn't know that outside those soundproof walls, someone had already made a choice. A dark and desperate choice. She wasn't going to laugh for long. Later that night, Velvet Lights began to empty, its vibrant energy slowly dissipating into shadows and whispers. The music faded, and the once pulsating club quieted, its secrets retreating into the darkness. Miles walked out of the VIP suite alone, his hands tucked into his pockets, a thoughtful expression etched on his face. Celeste stayed behind in the dressing room, meticulously wiping off her makeup, her movements almost mechanical. Her phone buzzed softly, displaying an unknown number. A text. Dinner tomorrow, no pressure, just conversation. She stared at it for a long moment, her mind reeling. No club, no tips, no performance, just dinner. A chance to be seen, to be valued for something beyond her physical form. The next evening, Celeste stepped into a private art gallery downtown, the air filled with the soothing sounds of modern soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. Miles waited patiently near a minimalist sculpture, his hands tucked casually into his coat pockets. You look, he paused, a gentle smile gracing his lips. Different. Normal. Celeste teased, self-consciously smoothing down her jeans and black blouse, relieved to be free of the towering heels and revealing costumes. Beautiful, he corrected, his gaze sincere. She blushed, a rare and unexpected reaction, but said nothing, simply returning his smile. They wandered through the gallery together, their conversation flowing effortlessly, ranging from the profound to the mundane. They discussed art, psychology, how childhood shapes people, and how pretending can become performance. At one point, Miles said, his voice casual. You know, I looked you up. Celeste tensed, her muscles instinctively coiling. Really? He nodded, his expression softening. I know your real name is Celeste Monroe, and I know your little sister, Malia, is still in the hospital recovering from that accident last year. She stopped walking, her heart pounding in her chest. Had she misjudged him? Was this all just an elaborate game? I'm not trying to scare you, he said gently, sensing her rising panic. I just needed to know if I was right about you being more than a fantasy. Celeste looked down, shame and vulnerability washing over her. She was hit by a drunk driver. Our parents are gone. It's just me. The club pays the bills. Miles reached into his coat, pulled out a folded envelope, and held it out toward her. What is this? A donation to the hospital in Malia's name. Enough to cover her neck surgery. Celeste didn't move, her eyes fixed on the envelope as if it were a ticking time bomb. I'm not asking for anything in return, he said, his voice soft but firm. I just want to help someone who deserves to not carry the world alone. She looked up slowly, her throat tight with emotion. I don't know what to say. Then don't, Miles said softly. Just say yes to being seen. Celeste sat alone on the edge of her bed later that night, the envelope still unopened beside her, its contents a tangible symbol of his unexpected generosity. The soft hum of the city outside her window did little to drown out the whirlwind of thoughts swirling in her head. Miles Kingston, a man with the kind of money that bought silence, loyalty, even bodies. Yet he had asked for none of those things. She danced for titans, senators, and celebrities, but she'd never met one who offered help without expecting to own a piece of her in return. Was it real? Or was this just another illusion? Another carefully constructed performance designed to deceive? Her phone buzzed, interrupting her turbulent thoughts. A simple message from Miles. Hope you made it home safe. I meant what I said. No strings. Sleep well. She stared at the message for a long time, her fingers hovering over the keypad before finally replying. You scare me, you know? A pause. The seconds stretched out, each one amplifying her anxiety. Then came his answer. Why? Because kindness like that usually comes with a catch. There was another, longer pause. Then came his final message of the night. The only catch is you have to start believing you deserve more than what you've settled for. Celeste set the phone down and leaned back against the headboard, exhaling deeply. The weight of her carefully constructed world suddenly felt lighter, as if a small crack had appeared in the wall surrounding her heart. The next morning, she visited her sister at the rehab center, her steps lighter than they had been in months. Malia, just 14, beamed when she saw her, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I heard someone covered my surgery, Malia said excitedly, reaching out to hug her sister. Was that you? Celeste forced a smile, unsure how to explain the complicated truth. Kind of. Malia studied her closely, her youthful intuition picking up on subtle changes. You look different. Happy. Is something good happening? Celeste hesitated, then gave a soft nod, unable to suppress the flicker of hope that had ignited within her. Maybe. That night, she returned to the club, drawn back by habit and necessity. But her spirit was somewhere else, her thoughts consumed by Miles and his disarming kindness. Her dance lacked its usual fire, its usual intensity. Not because she didn't care, but because her mind was filled with one man and one overwhelming question. What if this was the beginning of something real? Backstage, Tasha noticed the subtle change in Celeste's demeanor. She watched her in the mirror, her eyes narrowed with suspicion, noticing the faraway look, the soft, almost wistful smile that crept across her lips when she thought no one was looking. It enraged her. While Celeste floated on a cloud of newfound hope, Tasha tightened her grip on rage, fueling her simmering resentment. Her plan wasn't complete. It had only just begun. Rain misted the pavement outside Velvet Lights, turning the neon reflections into shimmering pools of color, painting the night with an ethereal glow. Celeste clocked out later than usual, her heels tucked securely into her tote bag as she stepped barefoot into the cool night air, too tired to care about the dampness. She usually caught a ride with one of the other dancers, but tonight, she craved the solitude, the freedom to think. The walk helped her clear her head, helped her feel real after hours of pretending to be untouchable. A few blocks from the club, she turned down a quiet side street, the same one she always took. She didn't notice the shadow that peeled away from the darkened alley behind her, or the second one that silently crossed the street and fell into step, their movements slow and deliberate, their eyes locked on her. Tasha, watching from across the road, leaned casually against a black sedan, her hoodie pulled low over her face, arms folded tightly across her chest, her heart hammered with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She hadn't hired cold-blooded killers, just a couple of rough types from her old neighborhood. Guys who knew how to scare a girl into quitting, guys who needed the money. Nothing too crazy, she told them. Just rattle her a bit. Make her second guess coming back. Celeste slowed her pace. She felt it. That invisible shift in the air, that primal alertness that something wasn't right. Her senses heightened, her instincts screaming. She stopped, listening intently. Footsteps. Then, yo! A gruff voice barked from the shadows, shattering the silence. Celeste spun around, her heart racing, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Two hulking figures stepped into the street, blocking her path, their faces obscured by hoodies. She didn't wait to find out their intentions. She turned and ran, her bare feet slapping against the slick concrete, her breath catching in her throat. But her bag slipped from her grasp, tumbling to the ground. She stumbled, her bare feet sliding on the wet surface. She slipped and hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of her lungs. One of the men reached for her wrist, his grip rough and demanding. Then, headlights cut through the darkness, tires screeching as a delivery van swerved to a stop, narrowly missing the attackers. Hey, what the hell's going on here? The driver shouted, his voice laced with anger and concern. The men hesitated for a split second, then bolted, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as they had appeared. The driver helped Celeste to her feet, his eyes wide with alarm. You okay? Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision. She could only nod, unable to find her voice. But as she stood there trembling, soaked to the bone and consumed by fear, one chilling truth rang in her ears, echoing through the night. Someone wanted to hurt her, not just rob her. Someone wanted to target her, and only one name came to mind. Celeste sat in the sterile environment of the police station, a scratchy blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders, her damp hair clinging to her face. Her hands trembled uncontrollably as she gave her statement to Officer Lin, a sharp-eyed woman who listened more than she spoke, her pen scribbling furiously in a notepad. They didn't take anything? Celeste said softly, her voice cracking with suppressed emotion. They didn't ask for money. It was like they just wanted to scare me, or worse. Officer Lin jotted down notes without breaking eye contact, her expression unreadable. You recognize either of them? Celeste shook her head, a wave of nausea washing over her. They wore hoodies. I didn't get a good look. The officer leaned forward slightly, her gaze unwavering. Is there anyone in your life who might want to hurt you? Celeste hesitated, her mind racing. Tasha's name sat on her tongue like venom, a bitter taste of betrayal. But she had no proof, no photos, no audio recordings, nothing but a gut feeling, a deep-seated suspicion that had been simmering for years. No, she said instead, her voice barely a whisper. Not that I know of. Later that night, she sat curled up on her couch in the dark, the silence of her apartment amplifying her fear. Her phone lay clutched in her hand, a lifeline to the outside world. After a long, agonizing pause, she dialed Miles's number, her heart pounding in her chest. He answered on the first ring, his voice instantly alert. Celeste. He didn't speak at first, just breathed, her silence conveying more than words ever could. Where are you? He asked, his voice filled with concern, already grabbing his keys. At home, she whispered, the word barely audible. Something happened. 20 minutes later, he was at her door, his face etched with worry. When she opened it, her eyes were puffy and red-rimmed, her face pale and drawn. Her lips were slightly split and bruised from the fall, a visible reminder of the attack. Seeing her like that, so vulnerable and shaken, made Miles freeze, a surge of protectiveness washing over him. He stepped inside without a word, gently pulled her into his arms, and simply held her, offering her the comfort of his presence, the safety of his embrace. I'm sorry, she murmured, her voice muffled against his chest. No, he said quietly, stroking her hair. You don't apologize for someone else's evil. Celeste pulled back slightly, her voice shaking. I think someone set it up. He nodded slowly, his eyes hardening with barely suppressed anger. Do you want to stay here tonight? You shouldn't be alone. I don't want to be alone, she whispered, clinging to him tightly. You won't be. Miles brought her home to his home, a minimalist apartment with soaring ceilings and breathtaking city views, a space that reflected his success and his refined taste, but also a place that felt surprisingly warm, filled with soft lighting and clean linens. He gave her a cup of calming tea, a comfortable hoodie to wear, a brand new toothbrush still in its wrapper, and most importantly, he gave her space, allowing her to process the trauma without pressure. When she finally slept, exhausted both physically and emotionally, it was the first time in weeks that she didn't dream of running, the first time she felt a semblance of peace. Outside, the city roared, its relentless energy a constant reminder of the chaos that existed beyond those walls. Inside, Celeste finally rested, finding solace in the unexpected sanctuary she had found. The morning light poured in through the tall glass windows, washing the apartment in a soft, golden calm. Celeste blinked awake, cocooned in soft blankets, wrapped in a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. Safety. For a brief, fleeting second, she forgot everything, the club, the rivalry, the attack. Then it all came flooding back, a wave of fear and anxiety that threatened to suffocate her. The alley, the chase, the terror. Her breath caught in her throat. She sat up slowly, her eyes darting around the unfamiliar room, realizing she wasn't alone. In the armchair near the window, Miles sat with a tablet in his hand, dressed in a fresh black t-shirt and comfortable joggers, glancing at her with a tired but warm smile. "You didn't have to stay out here," she said softly, her voice still raspy from sleep. "I didn't want to make you uncomfortable," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "You've been through enough." Her eyes welled with tears, a mix of relief and gratitude. "You're too kind." Miles stood, walked over to the bed, and knelt beside her, his eyes filled with genuine compassion. "Kindness isn't something you earn, Celeste. It's something everyone deserves, especially you." She looked away, unable to meet his gaze, still struggling to accept his unconditional generosity. Most men would have seen last night as a reason to disappear, to distance themselves from the drama and potential danger. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "Most men aren't me." Later that morning, Celeste tentatively explored his apartment, drawn to the details that revealed the man beneath the billionaire facade. It was sleek and modern, sure, but there was also a surprising warmth in the details. A framed photo of a beloved dog from his childhood, a shelf overflowing with psychology books, a half-finished painting tucked away in a corner, hinting at a hidden creative side. He made her breakfast, simple, thoughtful, and exactly what she needed. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts, until she finally spoke, breaking the quiet. "I don't think I can go back to the club." "You don't have to," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "You've outgrown it anyway." Celeste let that sink in, allowing his words to wash over her, releasing the fear and obligation that had been driving her for so long. It wasn't just a compliment. It was a liberation. That afternoon, his housekeeper arrived, two immaculately dressed women in uniform, their movements precise and efficient. The older one glanced at Celeste with quiet judgment, her expression subtle but unmistakable. The other whispered behind her hand as she passed, her words too low to decipher, but their meaning clear. Celeste stiffened, her old insecurities resurfacing. She was an outsider in this world, a reminder of a life Miles had left behind. Miles noticed her discomfort, his eyes narrowing. He turned sharply, his voice cutting through the silence. "If there's a problem, say it out loud." The women went silent, their faces pale. Miles faced Celeste again, his voice softening. "You're safe here, and you're wanted here, no matter who doubts it." Her heart swelled with emotion, but she swallowed it down, afraid to fully embrace the hope that was blossoming within her. She wasn't used to being defended, to being valued for who she was, not for what she could provide. But in that moment, she realized that this wasn't just safety. It was sanctuary, a refuge from the storm. A few days later, Celeste stood outside the precinct, the cold air biting at her cheeks, her breath misting in front of her face. She waited patiently as Officer Lin reviewed a file behind her cluttered desk, her expression serious. Her jaw was set, her eyes filled with a newfound determination. She had returned, not to run from her fear, but to confront it, to chase after justice. Inside, Lin met her with a curt nod, her eyes conveying a mixture of sympathy and respect. "You picked a good time to come in, Celeste." Celeste sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "You found something?" "We pulled security footage from the street near the alley," the officer said, tapping on her laptop, her expression grim. "The angle's rough, but we caught glimpses of two men loitering near the drop-off area before you arrived. One of them's in our system." Celeste's eyes widened, her heart leaping with hope. "Really? Name's Leon Brewster, known for petty intimidation jobs. He was arrested last night for an unrelated assault." Lin leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "When we questioned him, he cracked." Celeste's breath caught in her throat, her hands trembling. "He talked. He gave us everything," Lin confirmed, her eyes unwavering. "Said they were paid to scare you, just rattle you a bit. Said the money came from someone at the club." Celeste sat straighter, her fists clenching. "Who?" Lin hesitated, her expression thoughtful. "He claimed a dancer named Tasha gave them your walking route and a time." A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Celeste looked down, her face pale, her hands clenched into fists. "I knew it. She hasn't been charged yet," Lin added, her voice cautious. "But we're building a case. You may need to testify." Celeste nodded, her resolve firm. "I will." Back at Miles's apartment, he was waiting at the window when she returned, his silhouette outlined against the darkening sky. He had been pacing anxiously, his thoughts consumed by her safety. She stepped inside, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of anger and relief, her eyes stormy with emotion. He didn't ask any questions, just opened his arms, offering her the comfort and support she desperately needed. She collapsed into them, her body trembling. "She sent those men," Celeste whispered, her voice choked with tears. Miles stiffened, his jaw clenching. "Tasha, she's been jealous for years," Celeste said, her voice rising with indignation. "I just never thought." He kissed her forehead, his touch gentle but firm. "She's not getting away with this." Later that night, they sat curled up on the couch, the city lights twinkling outside the window. Celeste scrolled through photos of her and her sister, her heart aching with a mixture of love and guilt, thinking of all the times she'd almost quit dancing, all the nights she told herself to push through, to endure the humiliation and the competition. Now she didn't have to. Now she had a reason to fight, a reason to believe in a better future, and she had someone who would fight beside her. The storm had a name, and soon so would justice. It was a slow morning at Velvet Lights, a stark contrast to the frenetic energy of the nights. The music hadn't started, the chairs were still upside down on the tables, and most of the dancers were just arriving. Their movements sluggish, coffee in hand, makeup half applied, their faces etched with fatigue. Tasha strutted in, her usual swagger amplified, her heels clicking confidently against the floor, dark shades perched on her nose, her phone glued to her ear. She was already ranting to someone about booking a photographer for a rebranding shoot, her voice loud and assertive, attempting to project an air of normalcy. She didn't notice the 2 police officers enter the club, their presence a stark contrast to the usual clientele. She didn't see Officer Lin walk straight past the bar, her eyes locked on her, her expression grim. Tasha King. Lin's voice cut clean through the room, silencing the chatter and drawing all eyes to her. Tasha paused mid-sentence, her confidence wavering for the first time in years. Yeah, that's me. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault and endangerment, Lin said firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. You have the right to remain silent. Wait, what? Tasha backed up, her eyes wide with panic. What are you talking about? This has to be some kind of mistake. The other officer moved in, already snapping handcuffs onto her wrists, his movements efficient and impersonal. Gasps rippled through the club, spreading like wildfire. Dancers stopped mid-stretch, their faces etched with shock. The DJ stood up from behind his booth, his expression a mixture of disbelief and morbid curiosity. One of the bartenders muttered, "Damn." Under his breath, Tasha twisted in shock, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. No, this is a mistake. I didn't touch anyone. I swear. You've got the wrong person. You didn't have to, Lin said flatly, her gaze unwavering. You paid others to do it for you. Tasha looked around wildly, desperately searching for someone who would defend her, someone who would vouch for her innocence. But no one moved, no one spoke. Not Roxy, not the manager, not even the security guard she had flirted with just last weekend. They all stood frozen, watching her downfall unfold. As she was escorted through the club, her head held high despite the humiliation, Celeste stepped out from the hallway, her presence radiating calm and composure. Their eyes met, a silent exchange of understanding and unspoken truths. Tasha's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her bravado had vanished, replaced by a flicker of fear and regret. Celeste didn't blink, didn't gloat. She simply said, her voice clear and strong. You could have used your power to rise. Instead, you chose to destroy. Tasha was dragged out the doors and into the harsh daylight she had tried to avoid for so many years, her dreams of dominance shattered. Inside, the club felt quieter than usual, as if a dark cloud had finally lifted, allowing the light to shine through. Celeste turned and walked away, her head held high, her shoulders back, done dancing in the shadows of someone else's bitterness. The dressing room was almost empty, the remaining dancers whispering amongst themselves, their voices hushed with a mixture of fear and relief. Celeste stood alone in front of her locker, the soft hum of the fluorescent lights overhead a constant, droning presence. Her makeup kit lay open, half-filled, next to her favorite stage heels, silver and sparkling, scuffed at the toes and worn smooth at the soles, a testament to countless nights spent performing. They had carried her through so many challenges, so many triumphs and disappointments, but tonight wasn't one of them. She placed each item gently into a small cardboard box, her movements deliberate and reverent, her glitter palettes, her backup earrings, the photo of her and Malia taped to the inside of the locker door, a constant reminder of what she was fighting for. She stared at the photo for a long time, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope, then carefully peeled it down, tucking it safely away. One of the other dancers, Roxy, peeked in from the doorway, her expression hesitant. You really leaving? Celeste nodded, her smile bittersweet. It's time, Roxy. Then, with a resolute click, Celeste zipped up her worn leather bag, the weight of it a familiar comfort against her hip. Her once beloved heels, now symbols of a life shed, swung loosely from her fingers, catching the dim light like forgotten trophies. As she navigated the club's deserted main floor, the ghosts of 1,000 nights seemed to swirl around her. She paused, her gaze drawn upwards to the silent stage, remembering the pulsating energy, the heat of the spotlights, the intoxicating roar of the crowd. The soft, ghost-like flickers of the emergency lights played across the velvet curtains, still faintly perfumed with the mingled scents of cheap liquor and expensive dreams. But instead of the familiar pang of melancholy, a profound sense of tranquility settled within her. Outside, bathed in the cool glow of the streetlights, Miles waited patiently beside his sleek, black SUV. His attire was casual, dark jeans, a simple charcoal sweater, yet he possessed that inherent, effortless composure that always seemed to radiate from him, a quiet strength that anchored her. Their eyes met across the distance, and a warm, genuine smile bloomed on his face, chasing away the shadows that still lingered in her heart. Ready? He inquired softly, his voice a gentle caress. Celeste nodded, a silent promise of a future unknown trembling on her lips. More than you know, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the city's hum. He rounded the vehicle and held the car door open for her, a gesture that spoke volumes of his respect and unwavering support. As she stepped inside, a playful breeze, as if choreographed by fate itself, danced through her curls, lifting them in a gentle airy swirl, a final unspoken benediction from the city she was leaving behind. Settling into the plush leather seat, she cast one last, lingering glance at the shimmering, velvet-draped lights through the tinted window. Then, with a deep, cleansing breath, she turned away, forward, free. The apartment, their sanctuary, was filled with the comforting aroma of cinnamon tea and the crisp scent of freshly printed pages. Celeste sat cross-legged amidst a sea of textbooks, meticulously organized flashcards, and the scribbled notes that charted her progress through her first exhilarating week of classes. She hadn't fully grasped the extent of her yearning for knowledge, for the pure, unadulterated joy of learning. Not the practiced steps of choreography, not the rehearsed smiles plastered across her face for the benefit of demanding audiences, but the challenging complexities of lectures, the intricate dance of case studies, the fascinating labyrinth of human behavior. Psychology, a subject that had always held a magnetic pull for her, was now more than just a fascination. It was her chosen major, her guiding path, her promising future. Across the room, Miles leaned casually against the granite kitchen island, ostensibly absorbed in an investor's report, but his gaze kept straying back to her, drawn by the intensity of her focus, the quiet determination that radiated from her. "You've been at it for hours," he observed, his voice laced with concern. "Need a break, Professor?" She looked up, a mischievous glint in her eyes, a bright yellow highlighter tucked jauntily behind her ear. "Only if it comes with ginger cookies," she countered playfully. He chuckled, a warm, resonant sound that vibrated through the room. "Done," he declared, pushing himself upright. He disappeared into the kitchen, the clatter of dishes and the hum of the refrigerator a comforting soundtrack to her studies, while Celeste leaned back against the sofa, closed her eyes, and allowed the comforting hum of peace to wash over her. The past few weeks had felt like an eternity, a whirlwind of dramatic changes. Leaving the club, Tasha's arrest, the daunting but thrilling prospect of enrolling full-time in college. She still found herself walking cautiously, at times, double-checking locks, obsessively keeping her phone charged, instinctively glancing over her shoulder as darkness fell. But for the most part, she felt whole, safe, finally in control of her own narrative. Later, after sharing mugs of fragrant tea and devouring a plate of warm ginger cookies, they sat together on the balcony, wrapped in a thick blanket, as the city sparkled and pulsed below them, a million tiny stories unfolding against the velvet canvas of the night. "I spoke to the dean today," Celeste began softly, the city lights reflected in the depths of her eyes. "They approved me for the Women in Leadership Scholarship. Covers the rest of the semester." Miles grinned, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the fairy lights strung across the railing. "Of course they did. You're a star, Celeste." She smiled, but the joy in her expression flickered, replaced by a hint of vulnerability. "You're proud of me, aren't you?" Miles turned to face her fully, taking her hand in his gaze unwavering, filled with a depth of emotion that mirrored her own. "I've always been proud of you, Celeste. Always. But this is different. You're doing all of this on your own." He paused, searching for the right words. "Not all on my own," she corrected gently, her fingers tightening around his. He reached into his pocket and retrieved a small, silver key, pressing it into her palm. "What's this?" she asked, her brow furrowed with confusion. "Front door," he said simply, his voice dropping to a quiet, intimate whisper. "Yours officially if you want it." Celeste stared at the key, her heart thudding against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of hope and disbelief. "I want you here, Celeste," Miles continued, his eyes pleading. "Not just as a guest, not just as someone passing through, but as my partner, my anchor, my peace." Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring the city lights, each one a tiny spark of the infinite possibilities that lay before them. She didn't respond with words, didn't trust herself to speak, but instead leaned in and kissed him, a long, lingering kiss that conveyed everything she couldn't articulate, a silent promise, a resounding yes. Some answers, she realized, didn't need speaking. They resonated in the deepest chambers of the heart. The Kingston estate loomed in the distance, a stark, imposing structure against the twilight sky. It was quiet, eerily so. Tall, white columns framed the imposing front porch like judgmental eyes, their unyielding gaze seemingly scrutinizing every move. Inside, polished silverware glinted ominously under the cold, impersonal light of crystal chandeliers, and the air hung heavy with the suffocating sense of old money and meticulously pressed linens. Miles reached for Celeste's hand as they stepped out of the car, his touch a reassuring anchor in the face of the unspoken tension. "You sure about this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He squeezed her hand gently, his gaze meeting hers with unwavering resolve. "It's time," he affirmed. Inside, his parents, Richard and Claudia Kingston, were seated at the head of an impossibly long dining table, their postures rigid, their expressions carefully cultivated, both radiating that kind of poised coldness that was born from generations of privilege, ingrained reputation, and unwavering restraint. Claudia offered a polite, almost perfunctory smile, but her eyes scanned Celeste from head to toe, as if she were a poorly formatted resume, searching for flaws, for inconsistencies. "A pleasure," she said, her voice clipped and precise. "You're certainly striking, my dear." "Thank you, Mrs. Kingston," Celeste replied, her tone warm but firm, meeting the older woman's gaze without flinching. The meal commenced awkwardly, filled with stilted small talk about real estate investments, fluctuating market trends, and Miles's latest, undoubtedly lucrative, business deal. Celeste remained relatively quiet, observing, carefully sensing the unsaid questions simmering beneath every carefully chosen word, every veiled glance. Then came the inevitable interrogation, the moment she knew was coming. "So, Celeste," Richard began, dabbing fastidiously at the corner of his mouth with a starched linen napkin. "What line of work were you in before returning to school?" Celeste didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. "I was a performer, Mr. Kingston. I danced professionally at a club called Velvet Lights. It helped me pay for my sister's medical bills and put myself through college." A heavy silence descended upon the table, thick and suffocating. Claudia's fork froze midair, suspended precariously above her plate. Richard cleared his throat, the sound amplified in the cavernous room. Miles leaned forward, his jaw tight, his protective instincts kicking into high gear. And now, he interjected, his voice ringing with pride. She's a top student on a full scholarship, excelling in all her classes. She's smarter, more resilient, and stronger than anyone I've ever met. His parents exchanged a quick, unreadable glance. Claudia offered a brittle, strained smile. Well, she said, her tone condescending. Everyone has their own path, I suppose. Celeste smiled back, her expression sweet but sharp, her gaze unwavering. Yes, she agreed. Some just have to build theirs brick by brick, while others are born on the road already paved. After the strained and uncomfortable dinner, they drove home in silence, the weight of unspoken judgments hanging heavy in the air, until Miles finally broke the quiet. I'm sorry, he muttered, his voice laced with regret. Don't be, Celeste said softly, staring out the window at the passing landscape. I wasn't expecting to be embraced, just respected. And perhaps that was too much to ask. Miles turned to her, his expression earnest. I respect you, Celeste, more than you know, and if they can't see your worth, that's their loss, not mine. That night, back in the comforting familiarity of their apartment, Miles took her hand and kissed her palm, his touch sending a shiver of warmth through her. No matter what they think, no matter what they say, he vowed, his eyes locked on hers. This is home, Celeste, you and me, that's all that matters. Celeste exhaled slowly, releasing the last vestiges of anxiety and doubt, and finally allowed herself to smile, a genuine, heartfelt smile that radiated from within. For once, she didn't care what anyone else thought, didn't need their approval. She already had everything that truly mattered, right here in this moment. 1 year later, the sun dipped low behind the rolling hills, painting the sky in hues of soft gold and vibrant crimson, casting a warm, inviting glow across the backyard of a modest, charming house just outside the city limits. The air shimmered with an atmosphere of quiet joy, punctuated by the gentle cadence of laughter that drifted from the patio, where friends and loved ones gathered, drinks in hand, their smiles radiant beneath the soft glow of string lights swaying gently in the evening breeze. On a nearby table sat a small, unassuming cake, its white icing carefully piped with a simple, heartfelt message. Congratulations, Celeste. Celeste stood at the edge of the manicured lawn, just beyond the lively chatter of the crowd, her cream-colored dress flowing around her like liquid light. Her dark curls were artfully pinned up, delicate wisps framing her glowing face, casting playful shadows across her cheeks. In one hand, she proudly held her graduation cap, a tangible symbol of her hard-won achievement. In the other, she held Miles's hand, his presence a constant source of strength and unwavering support. You did it, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Celeste turned to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears, reflecting not just the pride of this momentous occasion, but also the weight of memory, the echoes of everything they had overcome together, the trials and tribulations that had forged an unbreakable bond between them. She squeezed his hand, her touch conveying a depth of gratitude that transcended words. We did it, she corrected softly. Just a year ago, this moment had felt impossibly distant, a mere fantasy. The arrest, the relentless scrutiny of the trial, the slow and agonizing process of healing, of piecing her shattered life back together, the recurring nightmares that haunted her sleep, the gnawing doubt that threatened to consume her, the unspoken silences that stretched between them, sometimes feeling too vast to bridge. But she had persevered, fueled by an inner strength she never knew she possessed. One step, one class, one breath at a time. Now, she had graduated with honors, a prestigious degree in psychology held in the same hands that had once clung desperately to survival, the same hands that had once danced under the velvet lights. She had accepted a coveted paid internship at a community mental health center, a place dedicated to trauma recovery and reintegration, a beacon of hope for those struggling to find their way back from the darkness. I want to help girls like me, she had told the interviewer, her voice steady and resolute, her gaze unwavering. Girls who dance through storms, who fight for their right to shine. A wave of laughter erupted from the crowd as she cut the celebratory cake, the sweet aroma filling the air with a sense of shared joy. And when the cheers subsided, Miles raised his glass, his voice ringing with heartfelt admiration. To Celeste, he declared, his eyes locked on hers, who walked through fire and then built a bridge so others could cross. You are, without a doubt, the strongest person I know. The applause that followed was warm and full, a resounding testament to her resilience and unwavering spirit. But Celeste didn't look to the crowd, didn't seek their validation. She turned to Miles, her soulmate, her anchor, and kissed him softly, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey, a promise of a future filled with love and unwavering support. Later, when the guests had departed and the twilight had deepened into a hushed stillness, they sat together on the porch swing, barefoot, their fingers entwined, their bodies swaying gently in rhythm. The trees rustled softly around them, whispering secrets to the night, and the stars began to wink to life above, a celestial tapestry of hope and possibility. Miles glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. Do you still think about it? He asked, his voice barely audible above the chirping of the crickets. The club? She asked, understanding his unspoken question. She paused, then nodded slowly. Sometimes I remember the camaraderie, the fleeting moments of joy, the sense of belonging. But mostly, I remember the struggle, the desperation, the constant need to survive. It was survival, Miles. But it's not my whole story anymore. Not all of it. You were always more than that, Celeste, he said softly, his voice filled with tenderness. Even before you saw it yourself. She smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that radiated from within, and rested her head against his shoulder, finding solace in his quiet strength. From dancer to graduate, from survivor to healer, from shadows to sunlight, her journey had been long and arduous. But she had finally arrived at her destination, her true calling. This, she whispered, gazing out at the star-studded sky. This is my real stage now, Miles. Miles kissed her temple, his touch gentle and reverent. You were always the star, Celeste. You just needed to find the right spotlight. They rocked gently in silence. The peace between them no longer hard-won but earned, held, lived. There were no flashing lights, no pulsating music, no demanding crowds, just love, just healing, just them, two souls intertwined, forever bound by the shared experiences that had shaped them into the people they were meant to be. The end. Narrator's voice. If you loved this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel for more captivating stories like this one.